Obviously, this is something we probably something we really don't want to do, but the current situation and how things have progressed here in New York State, I felt this is something that needed to be done, especially here in Chautauqua County, to protect our residents and our citizens. This executive order is a modification of the executive order I issued in response to our asylum seekers, preventing prohibition of any hotel, motel, or multiple dwelling facilities entering into a contract with New York City to house asylum seekers. It also prevents any municipalities, towns, villages, or cities to enter into such agreements as well. We were informed late Tuesday afternoon that there was an approval from New York State to allow New York City to issue FEPS vouchers, which were the Fighting Homeless and Eviction Prevention Supplement vouchers that were used within the 5 boroughs of New York City exclusively. In order to combat their increased homeless problem, New York City is now allowing those residents who qualify for this program to go anywhere in New York State. For the last 3 months, I have had one local municipality explicitly come to our county legislature, very concerned with the growing population of homeless we have. We have seen here in Chautauqua County small tent encampments set up. We have seen them migrate or move from place to place once they are evicted and or asked to leave. We've had outreach into these groups, so we totally understand, and I am in full understanding of the situations that some of these individuals are faced with. Many of them have been sanctioned from our shelters and are no longer allowed occupancy there based on the inability to follow rules. Some of them suffer from drug addiction and or mental health issues, and they are coming to us out of desperation. And we are having a difficult time managing the ones we have now. We see this problem in the southern part of our county. We're also hearing problems now arising in the northern part of Chautauqua County. So in listening to my residents and what they have said, we have followed suit and issued this order to prevent the use of any FEPS vouchers here in Chautauqua County without the written authorization and approval of myself, the county executive. This has been verified with our legal staff. We've looked over this and are within our rights to do so. Basically, this program is unlawful and poses a grave risk to the social and health emergency services and resources in our county. Practically, the county's homeless population is already at an all-time high, and a mass arrival or any potential mass arrival of homeless individuals could create a local crisis much greater than what we have right now. When we were talking to members of the commissioner who's providing this voucher, asking if this was legal, they really didn't have a clear question what the legal authority from New York City was to do this. In essence, we're flying this ship as we're building it. Several questions were posed by county executives asking, will this migration of the homeless increase your capacity or get them out of shelters so we can add more asylum seekers into shelters? Again, no questions answered and no response from the commissioner. So these are concerns that are growing across New York State. NYSAC convened a Zoom meeting on Tuesday afternoon, at which time I do not believe there was anyone who was in support of this action. It's concerning to us. I was one of 6 county executives that spoke in a press conference after a session of our NYSAC committee and stated the concern we had, and we were working with New York City. We had some great optimism as we move forward, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later, the city, in concert with the state of New York, who signed off on this and gave them approval, dropped this in our lap. Unfortunately, the governor had met with NYSAC officials as early as Tuesday morning, and none of this was even mentioned. So it's a grave concern. But I know I spoke, one county, Oneida County, issued this change in their executive order last night. I'm following suit today, and I've talked to several other county executives who will be following the same path. As reiterated by Anthony Pacenti from Oneida County, when we have a problem here in our county, especially in Chautauqua, I don't reach out to New York City and ask for help. I deal with the problem right here. We have had problems with homeless, and people have come to the county. We've sat down with our commissioners. We've sat down with the mayor, their trustees, village residents, and explained to them what the process is and how we are trying to help mitigate the situation. But in no time do we just say, hey, we're dropping this on your lap, thank you, goodbye, no questions asked. We felt we had a great relationship with the city's mayor, but unfortunately, many of us feel betrayed again, as this is something that should have been discussed with us, but instead it was done behind closed doors, and the verdict was given, and we just have to deal with it. So, unfortunately, we take these measures, but I'm taking these in response to communities who have reached out to me with growing concern of our increased homeless crisis, and we do not need to exacerbate or add any more problems to the crisis. So I stand by this, wishing we didn't have to do it. Now, a reminder, this is, we re-sign this every 5 days. So if something changes and we have some reassurances, so be it. But right now, I feel this is a measure that Chautauqua County needs to take in order to, protect our citizens and the residents of our county.
All right, thank you, PJ. Let's now open it up to questions. I guess we'll start at the top of the Zoom list here with David O'Connor from shawcat.com. Go ahead, Dave. If you have a question, please unmute. Okay, Dave, if you're not able to unmute, we can return to you. We'll go down then to the Post-Journal. I believe Chris Blakely is on. Chris? Yes, we got you.
So we reported on this earlier. We were approached by several local business owners beyond the hotels and the motels. I've personally seen the emails where they were being propositioned by Dago, the contractor that is supposed to be placing migrants on behalf of New York City. Is there going to be any legal action taken against that company for violating our emergency orders, and legally are we going to do something about even propositioning our, because the properties that they're looking at weren't even hotels or motels, they were commercialized property, and they were talking about putting 70 people in one building, which is just going to exasperate health and safety concerns. That was my question.
Well, Chris, the answer to that, if you could provide us a copy of that email, because I have reached out to the mayor's office on a Zoom meeting with NYSAC. I brought up that very statement, and the mayor's office has not reached out and contacted anyone. So if this is from Doc Go, then I'd like to see that, because they're kind of undermining what the mayor's office is doing. But I was reassured, and this was on a Zoom meeting with 50 or 60 leaders across New York State, that those rumors of the mayor's office reaching out were unfounded. So it's good to know. Unfortunately, I really would ask you to send that to our office so I can see it, because that is, best to my knowledge, isn't known by the city of New York's mayor, that DocGo is looking and doing this outreach. But it is a concern. You're right, 100%. One of the things they talked about was, these vouchers require HUD inspections to make sure the homes are even inhabitable. And their comment was, well, we can do that virtually. How? What's to say that home that they're touring is the home people are going to actually live in? And to put 70 people into one building, and again, we would have to look at this with the legal department, but we talk about any hotel, motel, or multiple living dwellings. If you've commercialized into an apartment and it's 4 or 5 apartments in one building, that's still a commercialized dwelling, which would be in prohibition of our executive order. Again, when that story ran, by the next morning, I probably had half a dozen to a dozen phone calls of people really upset as to the potential. And the numbers, according to the mayor's office, were unfounded. Those numbers have not even been discussed. Now, if that's from DocGo, they're doing something that they're either not conversing with the mayor's office, or we're getting fed a line, because I spoke directly with his contact, and he was very adamant. In fact, I have a text saying, we will not do anything in your county without coordination with your office. So that's news, that is happening. But again, like you said, we don't want to exacerbate the problem with 60 or 70. Now, that was asylum seeker. I want everybody to be clear on this. The current situation is not asylum seekers or migrants, whatever term wants to be added. These are relocating their homeless individuals, which, if we focus on just that issue alone, we have a crisis in Chautauqua County. We've been working at different areas to try to mitigate that. But again, this would only exacerbate. The governor's senior staff met with executives from NYC, with county executives, and she even talked about the increased problems with homeless. Now, they didn't give any indication they would help address it, but they did say that they understand that. So even the governor's senior staff realizes homelessness across the state is a growing concern. And to put this burden on other counties when it's not our own problem and we have our own problem is very disappointing.
All right. Now let's move on to Spectrum News.
Good afternoon. Outside of, if New York City was to bring in some of their homeless population to the county, what additional costs would you envision the county having to absorb associated with that action?
Well, that's a great question, and the same question was asked, to the commissioner on Tuesday. They really couldn't answer that. What they can answer is if those people qualify for public services, which are, Medicaid or HEAP or other services provide, through our social services department, that would be borne on the county. So if we add 70 more people, those are 70 more people that will be an added cost to the county's budget. I just submitted my tentative budget, and it does not account for another 70 people. Now, naysayers and opposition would say, well, are you telling me we can't add people? We're not saying that. But we would add for people if they're residents of Chautauqua County, but you're moving people from New York and dropping them here in Chautauqua County, they're going to be Chautauqua County's problem. That, again, increases the cost. So exactly what services they qualify for now, we don't know. What was indicative when they talked to us is the people that would qualify that for these vouchers must work a minimum of 10 hours a week. Well, how are you going to maintain working 10 hours a week if you move from New York City, let's say, to Chautauqua County? Unless we have a job here lined up, and that would be something different. But again, a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of silence when we ask those questions, and diversion, from answering this. But the cost for these individuals, aside from the rent would be covered by the city of New York, but the remaining cost would be borne on Chautauqua County and our residents.
Thank you. Let's move on to WIDV. If anybody's there, I'm not sure if you're just reporting or you have staff. Okay, then we'll move forward to WKBW if anybody's on.
Hi, this is Adam Francis with WKBW. County Executive, can you go further in depth into the issues that your county is already facing with assisting homeless people in your county?
Well, right now, I see we have members from one of our missions in Jamestown, New York on. Those missions, when somebody comes to us seeking assistance, temporary housing or housing, we do look for our shelters first. If the capacity of the shelter is maxed out, then we have to find other places for these individuals. Likewise, if these individuals are sanctioned, which I spoke of during the initial brief, that means that they are not able to live by the rules of the mission or wherever they're staying. So it's important to know that we're not just moving these people out of what could be in a homeless shelter or an existing area. These are people, in many times, in some cases, not all, but are not able to live or have not been able to follow the rules in those areas. So we do start working with our missions to see if there's any, or our shelters, finding out if there's any space. If not, then we find temporary housing in a local motel, which issued an RFP and has the contract with the county. Recently, sending individuals to that hotel in particular has been very problematic for those residents and people in the community. So, we're doing the best we can, We're trying to find places for these individuals, but it is becoming a growing problem with our own current situation right here in Chautauqua County, not adding any more to it.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to WNY News now.
Hello. Okay, yeah, so I have a few questions. One thing would be if there would be any litigation from these business owners, hotels, motels, and all of these other commercial properties who would be interested in entering into an agreement with New York City regarding the homeless situation. Would there be any litigation on that front from them being permitted to do so?
That would be on them. Obviously, these are human beings. We need to remember that. And money should not be the dangling factor in front of people. If you looked at the numbers that were posted in a recent news article, $120 a day for two people. That's $840 a week. That's $3,300 and some change a month. You can go in many places in Chautauqua County for a $3,300 a month apartment. It's a pretty nice apartment. And I think anybody in this listening from Chautauqua County would agree. But that's only for the apartment. That's not for the electricity. That's not for the heat. That's not for their food. That's not for their clothing. So when you dangle numbers in front of somebody, let's say I have an apartment, let's say 5 apartments, and I'm getting $500 a month. Now all of a sudden we see this price tag that the city could pay, or DocGo, whoever made this offer, could pay up to $3,300 a month. Am I not going to try to push that? Now, that's not the county saying we don't want to see these people succeed. What we're trying to say is we want to make sure that the people they're bringing in here, we're doing it for the right reasons. And, if it's just for the financial gain, we need to really reconsider. These are human beings. Is that not trafficking if you're just sending people here? I'm going to pay you this much money to take people if they want to relocate. That's a grave concern. And we spoke to that. When I made that same question, I said, how do we not consider this trafficking? You're sending people here for payment. And there was no answer to that either. This is serious. These people are down on their luck, and I am very sympathetic and compassionate. As has been stated, their mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, and uncles. I mean, it's not their fault sometimes, but based on a situation, whether it's drug addiction or mental health situations, they're in a situation, and I'm telling you, I'm sure many of them don't want to be in this situation. So we have to be compassionate and understand it's not about a dollar sign. It's not about how much money can we make off this situation. That's the growing concern I have. If you're going to dangle $3,300 in front of a landlord saying this is what the city of New York is going to pay you for the next 5 years, I understand their entrepreneurial spirit, but I ask them to please realize these are human beings, and we need to keep that into consideration as well.
We can circle to follow-up questions in just a moment. I just want to make sure we get to everybody. I believe we have someone from WDOE as well. If not, WJTN. And then the only other one I have on my list is WFO, if you're here. Okay, if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to unmute and ask.
Mr. Wendel, Press Blake State Post Journal again. So my question is in regards to status of homelessness. I understand homeless people being shipped out from New York to here, but then you talked about migrants and people seeking asylum. I totally get they're humans, but I personally, not personally, but as a concerned citizen and a journalist, when I look out back behind my building and I see UCAN City Mission filled to the brink, and I see veterans sleeping under a bridge, I have a hard time wanting to extend, or how do we extend services and support when places like UCAN are at a shoestring budget and we can barely take care of our own here? How can we feasibly open the doors and be a welcoming city when we don't have the resources? And quite honestly, the Mission and COE and COI and all them, they're struggling too, just to keep their doors open.
Well, Chris, thank you. I think you really supported my position I've taken from the very beginning. You know, there are homeless veterans that have fought and given their lives, or risked their lives for this country, and are getting very little. One of the statements made, and I've proposed this option to the governor. So if we go back, and if you remember one of my statements, and it's a big statement from the County Executives Association, the governor is withholding EFMAP, Federal Medicaid Assistance Percentage, that was designated to go directly to the counties. Now, we said this the other day, and it was mentioned to the governor in the meeting. Give us that money. If the governor say, I'll give you what we owe you, or what we're trying to take from you this year, the tune of $3 million, or maybe they'd even be so generous as to go back and reconcile the nearly $8 million that they owe us, could we then turn that around and make sure it's earmarked and dedicated for shelters? Yes. Would we do that? Yes. I don't know of any county executive that would say no. You know, there's been ongoing, different counties. Onondaga is a refugee resettlement county. Oneida County has a very vibrant public-private partnership with refugee facilities. But again, the governor's kept this money from us to put in your fund balance. We know we're maxed out, and I know people from the UCAN mission would love more than anything to get more funding. That's a request we have to the governor. And you're 100% right, Chris. How can we bring people in when we can't take care of the ones we have here right now? And I understand our current asylum seekers that are here are being cared for by the generosity and the open arms of our community. We received $100,000 from New York State that was passed through to COI to distribute. And they've already used that money very good and very wisely. I have no question as to whether our not-for-profits, when it comes to human services, can deliver when they're given the opportunity and given the funding. But right now, we need the funding. That's the key component. Listen, we're saying this isn't it's a Chautauqua County problem, but the problem's been borne by others, and it's now facing us. So we have to make situations, and we have to adjust. But 100% correct. I mean, your question is really, solidified my position that I've taken from the beginning. We have a problem right here. We need to shut this down. And the question that I would put out right now, and if it goes viral, so be it. I recommend, at the very least, if we talk about the asylum seekers right now, and focus that, because these are two different issues. Asylum seeker, is a current situation and problem we have, but this new one is relocating homeless individuals from New York City. But with the asylum seekers, I posed it to leadership that I'm familiar with that say, and I've asked, put a pause on the sanctuary status of New York State, put a pause on the sanctuary status of New York City. The governor in a recent quote was saying, we're full, we need to close the doors. Then make the statement for a year, suspend it for a year. Don't do away with it completely, but suspend the sanctuary status for New York State for up to 1 year. Suspend the sanctuary status for New York City up to 1 year. Let everyone catch their breath. Bring people to the table, have dialogue, and let's try to get some plans and some strategies ahead to create solutions instead of problems. That's the main focus here. We need to create solutions. And right now, they're very difficult to come by, especially when there's such little funding. But the governor has touted a $19 billion surplus. Well, there's a problem in New York State. I think we need to use that money to address the problem.
Any other questions?
Yes. So one question I would have is, what if any plan is currently in place to do your power best to fundamentally address the current homeless crisis that we are experiencing?
Well, right now we do have budgets in process that are assisting those individuals. We do get, I believe some reimbursement. I don't have anyone from my social services department that could answer this directly. They have been in contact with the Village of Faulkner. That was the community that reached out to us and asked questions. We have been able to answer those questions and address that as appropriately. But right now we're budgeted to deal with the problem we have at the current moment with very little, if any, extra resource. As I'm told, we don't have any extra resources, but we're just getting by with the funding we have right now. So we'll continue to do that as long as we can. But again, concern for the safety and well-being of our residents and those that would be coming here. It's just not the right thing to do without substantial resources. And again, one of the questions that was posed to the governor, if you're going to withhold the FMAP for putting it into our fund balance or using it wisely, I don't know why she would have a problem, but if they want to earmark it, we could earmark it. Earmark $3 million, $3.6 million, whatever our increase has been this year, or the FMAP reimbursement she's intercepting, then put that in a special fund. And we will make sure that the parties, I have the utmost confidence in the leadership, Billy Witherspoon at the UCAN City Mission and his staff, great stewards of any funding they get. COI, that group, again, incredible stewards. They can stretch money like there's no tomorrow. You can stretch $1 5 miles with many of these groups, but they need the funding. So again, that's within the purview of the governor.
Okay, if there are no additional questions, thank you all for joining us today.
One more for Spectrum News if I can.
Yep, go ahead, absolutely.
Yes, just wanted to ask, this isn't the first time that New York City's tried implementing a program like this, and that one ended up in somewhat lengthy litigation. Is there any discussion about Chautauqua County initiating more litigation ahead of time before any potential people would come from New York City? And if so, is there a specific state law that you think justifies that?
Well, as far as the litigation goes, our main concern or main focus is not to go into litigation. I mean, I don't want to create a lawsuit for the county, but I do have a responsibility to, protect the county and our resources as well. The litigation's coming from New York City. The point that's most concerning, and the reason why I support this status that I've done and the position I've taken, is when asked point blank, and I believe it was by Ed Day, the county executive of Rockland County, he said, under what authority does the city have legally to do this? And they didn't have an answer to that. So if they're going to come back now and file a lawsuit, under what pretense? Because 2 days ago, you didn't have any information or pretense to file a lawsuit. And if you look, Chautauqua County, as well as many others, were named in a lawsuit by New York City, but those lawsuits have been dropped. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't for any monetary value. It was just, my belief is just to extend and draw out the county's legal resources, both financially and legally. The city has a deeper pocket than Chautauqua County, but the latest lawsuit was not for a financial or monetary value, other than just fighting us, saying that what we're doing is unconstitutional. And these lawsuits that have been, brought up by the city of New York have been challenged and upheld in courts, and actually, not upheld, but reversed. They've been found that they cannot force these on, one was in Orange County, and there was an injunction, it was upheld, and, again, so right now I don't see any legal premise that New York City can do this, by relocating people to Chautauqua County. So, again, it would just be a matter of filing a lawsuit, but for the purpose of filing a lawsuit or the purpose of just dragging this out and trying to, financially drain a community, that's disappointing too. And, go back to, I think it was mentioned in one of the questions, or kind of paraphrased maybe, we did have a working relationship with the mayor's office. 2 weeks ago at NYSAC, we were very confident that we all understood each other. A lot of concern. I know county executives that are colleagues of mine that were told one thing by the mayor and something completely different happened within days of our meeting. Four county executives met with the mayor of New York City at Gracie Mansion in middle of July. From both sides of the aisle, bipartisan group. And we all said, please do not send them to our counties. Our resources are stretched thin, we're at capacity. And in a matter of days, the mayor sent individuals to those counties that asked directly, please do not send them. They felt betrayed, they felt lied to. And that was a growing concern. We felt confident 2 weeks ago after leaving NYSAC. We've mended that bridge. We've tried to work together to create solutions. And this was under our asylum seeker issue. Now No one talks to any executive leadership. The executive director of NYSEC was not informed of this until the 11th hour and 45 minutes. This was a last-minute bomb dropped in our laps, and now the 57 counties have to figure something out when the 5 counties in the largest city in this country and possibly the world is going to create and dump their problems on our lap. Very concerning.
Mr. Executive, I did have another question. I actually had an interview today with Carmelo Hernandez, trying to understand a little bit more about how the social service programs and DSS is working. And it seems like he has a tremendous road ahead of him he's going to have to unravel. But I know from talking with some of the homeless and interviewing Aaron and Billy over at UCAN, I didn't get a chance to ask him this, so I was going to ask you. When an organization like UCAN or COE or one of the warming centers, as you mentioned, sometimes the guests don't play well with other people and they get booted for, in the case of UCAN, they may boot them for like 3 days. But that in turn draws sanctions from DSS and from mental health for 30 days. But UCAN still lets them back after 3 days and they're footing the entire bill now. Or they can keep them out and follow hand and foot with a 30-day sanction. Are we not shooting ourselves in the foot by holding them accountable with a 3-day suspension, and then UCAN shoots itself in the foot? They just lost 30 days worth of funding for the guy.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I would have to follow up and defer that to Carmelo. But when it comes to sanction, we are the last resort. So if they're sanctioned by us, we're the last group you want to be sanctioned by. There really isn't anything else. So I'd have to, ask that question and get the answer for you. My belief is many of those sanctions are. I do not know if they're county. I would guess that they are following the state guidelines, for sanctions. And sometimes state penalties are harsh. But I will get that answer. I do not know that answer 100%.
All right, if we don't have any other questions, I appreciate everyone's time today, and a recording will be made available along with the press release. I'll send all of you momentarily. Thank you.